Welcome. Let's go ahead and jump in. I really want to try and stay on schedule today. We have a super exciting webinar for you all today. And just a quick note, I realized in the last few webinars I have neglected to introduce myself. And I know most of you know who I am, but I'm Kirsten Stevens with the Kannico Agency. And we do these webinars once a month on the second Tuesday of every month. And we bring in guest speakers. We pick topics that we think are really relevant for everyone. Sometimes you'll hear us talk about things that are specific to South Florida, but we really try and make this broad so that everyone can benefit in some way. But anyway, great to have you all here. And let me just start sharing my screen here. All right, so today we are talking about end of year fundraising, and we have a special guest, Vicki Pugh with Advancement Experts. She's the CEO and founder of that company. And she's going to be talking to us about three key strategies to stay on track through end of year. Again, a little bit about me. You can read this in the slides after the session, but I am a board source trainer and consultant. I'm a CFRE, which Vicki is as well, certified fundraising executive with AFP, certified in nonprofit management. I'm a certified coach, and I also do training with Lynn University and a number of other organizations. So really quickly, I'm going to give a shorter intro. You can, again, you'll be able to read this yourselves or read it on the slides, but Vicki Pugh is a nationally recognized philanthropic consultant, strategist, and educator. As CEO of Advancement Experts, she has guided organizations like the New York City Opera, Carnegie Hall, Bellevue, Florida, and the YMCA, raising millions through board development, strategic planning, major gifts, and campaigns. She serves on the faculty of the Fundraising School at Indiana University's Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. She holds her CFRE and CAP, which is the CAP, Chartered Advisor of Philanthropy credentials. She's a sought-after speaker and guest lecturer. Vicki's leadership has been recognized with the AFP Outstanding Fundraising Professionals Award, and she continues to shape the field through her board service and community involvement. Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you, Kirsten. Great to be here.
So happy to have you here. All right, so I'm going to let you jump in. And do you have sharing abilities? I know you have some.
I think I do. So I'll put my slides up here.
Perfect. I'll make you co-host just in case. All right, great.
Great. I'm getting it here. Okay, we'll play from the start. I don't know why I had a bit of a racing theme in mind when I developed this, but I was kind of thinking about the race to the end of the year. Oftentimes, this is the time, September and October, when we are preparing for our year-end campaigns. And it's easy for us, right, at this time of the year to start thinking about all the things we have to do to get ready for that. And as the fall starts, we get busy with other things too, because that might be the time that our event starts popping up, or more events, more people are in town, summer's over, etc. So it's really important to stay on track because annual funding is key for our organizations. So my first tip in year-end fundraising is to be focused and keep your eyes on the road. Keep your eyes on the road to your plan as you're preparing for year-end giving. So hopefully you have a fundraising plan that's actually written down. And in your fundraising plan, you probably have a few appeal periods during the year where you're raising money for your annual fund. And when I talk about annual fundraising, that's just giving to your organization to support your organization's mission. Those can be unrestricted gifts. They can be some restricted gifts, but restricted to things that you do every year operationally to fulfill your mission. And we talk about, a few campaign periods throughout the year, but the year-end one is critical because 40% of all giving in the US is done in November and December. 33% of that happens in December. So this is an important time. And hopefully your plan, has a timeline where you'll have a start and an end date to this year-end campaign. Typically, organizations will start in campaigning usually around the first or the middle of November and finish their year-end campaigns out, of course, at the very end of the year. If we look at data from 2024, giving data from 2024, 33%, or excuse me, 40% equates to $236 billion. So that's how much was given last year at the end of the year. So there's a lot of money out there that people are holding because, they're thinking about their philanthropy, they're thinking about their taxes, they're thinking about all their, all that they do toward the end of the year. One of the tips I will share, in addition to making those appeals and developing a multi-channel strategy, and when I refer to that, I mean, we need to ask in many different ways. Perhaps we have direct mail letters that go out or emails. We have follow-up emails to that. We might have some video content that we push out. Maybe we even have some social media posts on our social media sites that promote year-end giving, all with the same theme, all that look the same, and have some really important year-end giving messaging. But one tip I want to share is don't forget DAF and IRA giving. DAF stands for Donor Advised Funds. Probably many of you know what a donor advised fund, but those are funds that they're philanthropic funds that donors set up either through a community foundation or through what we call a commercial DAF, which would be like a Fidelity, a Schwab, and people give from those funds. So they're thinking about what they've accumulated in those funds, especially at the end of the year. Do I want to get some money out to my favorite charities? So it's good to remind people. Remember, we accept gifts from donor advised funds. Don't forget about that. Sometimes people sock money in those donor advised funds and they don't know how much they have. They kind of forget about it. So it's important to remind them about that. So don't hesitate when you're, putting together a pledge form or on your website, your giving form. Don't forget to remind people they can give through their donor advised funds. IRA, giving from retirement accounts, is important too. Many people, if they're 70 and a half or older, they can actually make a gift from their IRA to a designated charity, and they don't have to pay any income tax on it. So it's very appealing for donors who are taking money out of their IRAs. If they're 73 and older, that actually can meet what's called their required minimum distribution, which is also important. Some people don't need their retirement money, but they still have to pay taxes. When money is taken out of your IRA after you've retired and you're taking that money, it is taxed, ordinary income taxes. So donors kind of like to avoid those taxes and get those to their favorite charity. So it's oftentimes good to remind them too. I advise my clients that's a great thing to remind people about in October. The
Mm.
end of the year is coming up. If you're thinking about your IRA and your distributions and you haven't taken anything yet and you don't want to pay the taxes, why not support your favorite charity? It gets the asset out of your estate. It helps you avoid taxes. Those kinds of things are really appealing to donors. So then lastly, as I said, you have a plan, stick with it. Try to, filter out all those squirrels that come along at this time of the year, all those distractions, because a well done campaign takes focus. It starts now, planning the steps to get your letters out, to get your emails scheduled, to get your social media out, to prepare videos that you might as part of this year-end giving strategy. So build the plan and stick with the plan and think about some of these tips that you might include in your messaging. So that is tip number one.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
The language about the donor advised fund and IRA, would that be something that you would put kind of as a little, oh, by the way, at the bottom? Or how do you recommend bringing that to people's attention, Vicki?
So if you do a form or an envelope, something that someone has to fill out and they have to check mark, I'm giving by a check, I'm giving by a credit card. You could even have a check box that says, I'd like to give from my donor advised fund, or I'd like to make a distribution from my IRA. You could have those as check boxes. And And then you must offer an opportunity for them to be in touch with you to discuss details, because those types of giving require a little bit of an extra step usually. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say, I would like to make a gift for my dad. Please contact me at this. Please contact our staff to organize it or to facilitate it. Some people need help with that. Some people are pros at giving from their donor advised funds. They know how to do it. You usually can do it online. You go online to a portal that where the donor advisement is held, and you request a grant through there to your favorite charity. But
Perfect.
sometimes they might need some information from you.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Any other questions about that, about
Yes. Does
IRA?
anyone have any questions while we're on the donor advised and IRA topic? So that you can just unmute if you'd like to just jump in. Do you have any questions? Okay. All right.
Okay, we'll continue on to tip number 2. Make your fans feel special. Make your donors feel special. The best prospective donor to your organization at the end of the year is an existing donor, someone who's given before. Maybe they gave last year around the same time, or maybe they gave it sometime last year and haven't yet given this year. Maybe they didn't give last year. Maybe they've been a lapsed donor that's hasn't given for a little while. Those are all still people to reach out to with some kind of a personalization if you can. And oftentimes our annual fundraising strategies are done through things that are a little more indirect, like mail letters, or again, the social media appeals and our email appeals. But can you personalize them? Can you put the person's name on all of that information, their address? Be specific about what you're asking for. Research shows that if you ask people for specific amounts, they'll consider specific amounts. If you leave it open-ended, you leave it up to chance. They could give more than you think they might give, or they might give significantly less. So why not ask for specific amounts? If you are acquiring, if this is a donor that you've never reached out to, or a prospective donor you've never reached out to, first time that you'd like them to give, suggest some amounts. We oftentimes suggest 3 amounts: $50, $100, $150, because the psychology and the research shows that people oftentimes will pick the middle amount. So suggest some amounts that are based on things that you need. $100 will fund this. Costs us, $1,000 for every client we serve. $1,000 gift will help us help one. Whatever you use, equate those amounts to something that your organization needs to serve your mission. So that's a new strategy, new donor strategy. If it's somebody that you would like to renew their gift, we don't usually ask a donor to renew their gift every year at the same level. We ask them to renew, we try to keep them on an every 3-year schedule. Give a gift, renew it the next year, and the next year we might ask for an upgrade. So are you focusing on tracking that? Do you have systems where you can figure out, oh, who's ready for an upgrade and who might be ready just for a renewal? When we ask for a renewal in a letter or in an email, we ask for a specific amount. You gave $100 last year. We're so grateful. We would like for you to continue your gift at $100 this year. Easy, right? If you say, thank you so much for your gift last year, we would love for you to renew your gift. I, as the donor, am going to look at that letter and go, what did I give them last year? I gave to about 7 or 8 charities, which is the average. The average person gives to about 7, 8 charities. I give to about 7, 8 charities. I don't know if I gave $1,000 or I gave $25. So I'm just going to give 50 this year. Guess what? You've lost a larger gift from me. So make sure you're asking for a specific amount. If a donor's given for a couple of years the same amount, ask them for an upgrade and they'll consider it. It's amazing. I've found that to be true throughout my career. You ask for an upgrade, and oftentimes people will give you that upgrade. A nice gauge of how much to ask for an upgrade is about 50% more. So if I gave $100 last year, thank you so much for your gift of $100 last year. We'd love it if you would consider a gift of $150 this year, because that's going to help us do more and serve more. So those are some renewal, upgrade, and acquisition strategies you might want to build into your year-end campaign. Tell your stories, right? Y'all have amazing stories of how your nonprofit is changing lives or saving lives. And that's what our business is all about. So tell those stories and speak from the heart. Right? I remember when I worked for Palm Beach Atlantic University, and I would write an appeal letter every year for our president. I was his ghostwriter. And I remember one time giving him the letter, and he's like, "Are you serious? You said the same thing last year and the year before." Like he was really getting on my case in a nice way. And he's like, "This doesn't speak from the heart. I want you to speak from, your heart and my heart." And so I really took that into consideration as I started to write more compelling letters and appeals. Use some fresh perspectives. A client not too long ago asked me, well, what makes a direct mail letter stand out from all the others? Because you probably get direct mail letters at the end of the year. People who are very philanthropic get a ton of them. So, how do you make yours stand out? It's a great question. I wish I knew. But what I can tell you is sometimes the simplest of things will make your letter stand out. So, this client asked me, "Do you have one? Do you have a letter that really did well, that stood out?" And I'm like, "I do." And you're going to almost laugh at it. It was a letter from an organization in North Carolina I worked with that serves they do child care, they do child, like kind of like our CSC, our Children's Services Council here. They serve as that kind of an entity for their community. And at the top of the letter was this adorable little picture of a fish tank that was designed by, a 3 or 4 year old with crayons, right? And it was adorable. And there was a letter, and it was from the perspective of the preschool director. And she talked about the transformation that she saw in the children that came there, because they served kids whose families would not be able to afford childcare otherwise. And that was they got so much response to that. And it was
Mm.
just a simple, very simple, but it was from a fresh perspective. It was from the child care director. It wasn't from the CEO or the CFO or the board chair or the development director. It was from somebody working day after day with the clients. So how can you tell those best stories and speak from the heart using those fresh perspectives? Your campaign at the end of the year should all look uniform. Should have some similar themes, perhaps some similar graphics, lots of the same messaging, but it can be told from different points of views. If you are, in addition to all these kind of direct mail and more mass appeals that we do, we also work to personalize our approaches to our major donors, our larger donors to our annual giving program. That the amount of those gifts are different depending on the organization. Your threshold for a major gift or a larger gift might be $1,000. Someone else's might be $250, whatever it is. Those folks need a little bit more personalization. So if you need to have meetings with donors, start now. It's
Mm.
September. We only have a few months to go until the end of the year. Don't wait until October and November to start making appointments, because you know what happens is more and more people are coming back to the area, or as they're getting into all their fall holiday preparations and visitors and all that, it's going to be hard to find the time to talk with someone from their favorite nonprofit. So start
Mhm.
making those donor appointments now, because you'll want to make sure when you're asking and when you're cultivating and asking, you're asking for specific amounts for specific things, especially when you're doing that one-on-one approach.
Vicki, question for you on those donor appointments. What are you telling them? I mean, I know we all want to know when we go into that meeting, and donors shouldn't be caught by surprise. They need to know why we're reaching out. But how do you recommend phrasing that? Is there a way that you found that's effective?
To actually make the appointment or as, as you're talking to them?
To make the appointment so that it's not ambiguous, you don't catch them by surprise, but they know that you're approaching them because year-end giving is this is the time it's coming up.
I think the first thing is express gratitude, right? We're so grateful that you've been a long-term supporter or you've been a major supporter of ours over the years. That's number one. Number two, I'd like to have some time to meet with you just to share with you how your gifts have made a difference to our organization. So it's gratitude and stewardship first.
Mhm.
We want to show donors how their dollars impacted lives. Because when we do that, they're not going to give up on us. They're going to want to continue to give and support.
Mhm.
So those are two things I would say. And then we'd love to talk about what's going on and some of our needs and our campaign for the end of the year.
Mhm.
So they're again,
Mhm.
they're not surprised, and they're going to know that you're probably going to make an ask because it's that time of the year. But there's again no surprises. Gratitude, stewardship, and let's talk about some of our needs and your needs at the end of the year. Which
Excellent.
that's not one of my tips, but I'll add it as a tip. Because oftentimes when we approach donor, it's kind of, we need something from you, right? We need you to make a gift to support the things that we need and our clients need to improve their lives. Well, we sometimes forget about the fact that donors benefit from giving too. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever stopped and thought donors actually get benefits from giving money? They get these amazing feelings of happiness and joy because they're giving back and helping others. They get a great feeling from being a part of a big solution or a solution. They get a great feeling from being a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And yes, they get some tangible benefits sometimes. They get recognition. They have access to some social capital if you gather groups of donors together at certain times of the year. Perhaps you put them in an annual report. You're going to make them feel great about their gift. So donors do have some benefit too. And when we're having those conversations, it's nice to ask those things. How do you benefit from giving to our organization? What if you asked a donor that? How do you benefit? It'd be really interesting to hear what they said, because that might help you when you're actually having those conversations one on one to make sure you remind them. Don't forget, you get a lot of great joy out of giving to our organization. That's just kind of silly, but you get the idea.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then the number three tip is drive with your case for support as your roadmap. Sorry for the blurry picture. I was trying to find a racetrack map, and this was one of the best I could do. But what I mean by that is all of you should have a case for support. And if you don't know what that is, I'll just share a little bit about what a case for support is. It's a document, it's a written document, and it contains all kinds of messaging to use in your year-end appeals and when you have meetings with donors and when you are creating a brochure or a social media post, when you're designing a script for a presentation in the community, when you are putting together a video. You get the idea. It's kind of the foundation for everything that you do in fundraising. And here are the things that's in a case for support. Why you exist. Number one, start with why. Some of you are probably familiar with Simon Sinek. He has a book that's called Start with Why. And through his research, extensive research, he has found that when you start with the why, and you're trying to get somebody to invest in your cause or a product, he uses this for the for-profit industry too, that excites something different in the brain that makes people want to do more. The sales equation is, when you start with why, it gets people to spend more money. But in the nonprofit equation, it gets people thinking about a bigger investment of their charitable dollars in your organization. So we start with why you exist, what problems you address. How do you know those are really problems? You might have some data and facts and what you know from your organization's work. What programs do you address that helps to, help to either solve or find some short-term solution to that problem? What impact do you have? How many people do you serve every year? What kind of impact does that have on them and on your community? Why is your organization the one to do this work? What kind of expertise do you have? Board leadership. How much money do you need to raise? You know, how much money do you need to raise to do this mission work? How much does it cost per client or hour served, or this, this part of our organization costs this much to run. And then the last piece of that is, why should donors care enough about this, your organization, to make an investment? So you should have a written document with all these things in there. Perhaps you pepper in some stories or testimonials from people. And once you have this, could be a pretty big document. I've written cases for support that are 5 pages and some that are 20 pages. It just depends on the organization. You may never give this whole thing to anybody, but it's kind of your library. I have a colleague I teach with at IU, and she says, this is your bookcase. You've got all this information on your organization. And when you're ready to design those components of your year-end campaign or your middle of the year campaign, or whenever you do your campaign, you go to that library and you pull out that messaging so that you're using it consistently, time and time again through everything. We oftentimes, I'm going to share another story to illustrate what I'm about ready to say. I'm meeting with a client and they're saying, well, we have, we send out we have kind of three appeal periods during the year. And one has this theme and this focus, and one has this theme. And then in our year-end campaign, we send out a direct mail letter from our CEO. And then we send another direct mail letter about helping teenagers who can't afford to get driver's license. And it's like, oh my goodness, you're confusing your people, right? I think you're confusing your donors because you've got all these different themes that are occurring during the year. Stick with your case for support. Use the language over and over again. Corporate America is excellent at this. And we can demonstrate that just by using a few taglines that they use, right? Like, just do it. What is just do it? Nike, right? What is finger licking good? Kentucky Fried Chicken. Eat fresh, Subway, right? So what if you created some language, right, that was memorable, that you used over and over again? Wouldn't it be great if somebody knew your organization by your, your case for support? Wouldn't it be great? So think about using this over and over again. You might get tired of some of this language and messaging, but your donors and external population will not, because oftentimes they'll hear it for the first time. You've given it to them 8 times, but something will get through the clutter and they'll hear it or see it for the first time. The research shows that a new donor, this is someone you're inquiring, has to see your messaging about giving 8 to 10 times before they're going to act. So you don't want that 8 to 10 times being different every time. You want it to be the same, right? Same over and over again. So if you don't have a case for support, you might want to think about developing that. It's fun to do in a team. It's fun to do in a team. It's fun to do, bring some board members in, create this document, and then keep it fresh. Every year, update it. You might have new programs. You might have new testimonials or stories you want to put in there. You'll have new impact numbers. Keep it up to date. Every time you're going to do your appeal periods, especially at the end of the year, go back to your library, pull out that information, and use it over and over again.
Such a good point about the confusing messages because I think instinctively we feel like we need to bring in something fresh. There has to be something new and shiny and exciting. But I agree with you. I think it gets confusing. There's more clutter and more murkiness the more we're throwing out at people. But if we stick to the same thing and the same language over and over again, yeah, completely agree, Vicki. It becomes very, very clear. And like you say, you have that case for support. That becomes the guiding document for the entire organization. The board members have a place to get a script from when they're talking about the organization. Each team member knows where to go to get some of the facts that they're going to be putting out on socials or in emails. So it's a great, great guide.
So use that case for support. And if you do these three things and all the other things we talked about, this is how you'll feel at the end of the year. You will have won. You will have made your goal and you will be victorious in raising the kind of money your organization needs.
Hmm.
Not just to survive, but to really thrive and be forward thinking.
Hmm. So what we did when we asked Vicki to come on was we asked her for her top three tips, and then we have some questions that we've already put together that have come up and that she and I have discussed that we find that people ask a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of those questions. But does anyone else have a question about the three tips that Vicki has already covered? Do you want to just refresh our memory, Vicki, on what the three were?
The three tips were to stay focused,
Mhm.
be personal, make your message personal, and stick to your case for support.
Mhm. And Vicky started out by saying that a plan is what should be guiding your work, right? These days, it's not that hard to create a plan. You can even use AI if you need AI to help you gather your thoughts and gather your ideas and put together a plan for the next 3 or 4 months. The first question that comes to me, Vicky, before we even jump into the ones that we already talked about is, and this comes up a lot, people ask me, how do I integrate something like Giving Tuesday into my end of year fundraising campaign?
That's a great question. I think everybody's got Giving Tuesday on their minds. And I know when was working in a nonprofit with board members, they would often say, okay, what are you doing on Giving Tuesday? Everybody's out there on Giving Tuesday. We need to be there too. So you have to really assess whether or not Giving Tuesday can be successful for you and whether or not you want to put the energy into it.
Mhm.
A lot of organizations do well. I'm not saying don't do it, but I think consider how much time you spend on it and if it's going to work for you. It did not, it's never worked for me. I've tried it a few times. I've tried to do some campaigns on Giving Tuesday. It's never worked that well. I think for a couple of reasons. There's everybody else out there also sending out messaging on Giving Tuesday, right? So maybe it's not a fundraising message you want to put on Giving Tuesday. Maybe you want to send out some messaging. It can be on social, you can do some email that are a little bit just more focused on your mission. On this Giving Tuesday, we are our thank you. What if you did a
Mhm.
thank you to your donors on Giving Tuesday, right? And
Mhm.
and spend the rest of the year working on your strategies, your tried and true strategies, the renewal, the acquisition, the upgrading strategies for your annual campaign.
Okay. Okay. Great. But everything always connected back to your case for support, what you do, who you do it for, what problem you're solving, right? Not something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you may even think about branding your appeal campaign, or creating a campaign theme that you use all the time. I will share when I
Yes.
was at the Y. Our campaign was called Partners with Youth, the Partners with Youth campaign. Much more fun than an annual giving campaign, right? Or end of year campaign. It's called Partners with Youth. Always. I worked for the Y for 12 years. I worked for different YMCAs, not just in Palm Beach County, but in Volusia County. Our campaign was called the Partners with Youth campaign. And every
Mhm.
time that campaign started, every single person that had any relationship with the Y knew what it was because we used that name over and over again. When I was at Ballet, Florida, we called our campaign, our annual campaign, the Toe Shoe Fund, because that's the second largest expense within a ballet company's budget is toe shoes. Point shoes are really expensive and they wear out really fast. So that was a way for us to kind of brand our campaign. We had a logo. We had some, visual elements. I almost said elephant. Visual elements that were recognizable. So when people got the information, they know where it was from. But we kept that theme throughout, and that helped create a lot of excitement around it. And it wasn't so pedestrian. It's just an annual fun campaign.
Great, great suggestion. Great suggestion. We have a question from Casey Ray Christopher. Could you please go over the steps for the IRA-based donation? This would be new to our organization, but I can see some donors being interested.
And you can go on, thank you for that question, Casey. There's great information everywhere. You can just Google or use ChatGPT or your AI tools and look a little bit of information on this. But here's the basics. Anyone that has an IRA that has enough money accumulated in it and is 70 years and a half. It has to be 70 and a half. Don't ask me why, or older. It's based on the actuarial tables. They can actually transfer up to $100,000. So maybe they do 10 or 20 or 50 or whatever, but up to $100,000 they can transfer directly from their IRA to a nonprofit. All they have to do is request that disbursement through whomever is holding their IRA. There's a process, and all the IRA holders have it. You
Mhm.
submit that request that you'd like a grant to go to your favorite charity, and the whoever holds the IRA funds, they will write a check or send an electronic transfer directly to the nonprofit. It doesn't go to the donor, because if it goes to the donor, they have to pay ordinary income tax on it. They can do it once a year if
Okay.
they're 70 and a half or older. You can do it every year if you want, if you're 70 and a half or older. If you are required to take minimum distributions from your retirement account, which is at 73, if you're 73 or older, you have to take minimum distributions. You don't have to take that if you don't need it, because if you take it, it's going to incur ordinary income tax. You can do the
Mm.
same thing. You can ask your IRA holder to send up to $100,000 to your favorite charities, and that can account for your required minimum distribution or portion of it, depending on what your distribution is.
Mhm. Mhm. Excellent.
And
Fantastic.
Kirsten, I've usually done a direct mail letter at the end of the year. About October, as I said, is a good time to remind people. A nice little direct mail letter, just reminding them that this is a nice provision if they meet these qualifications, and it's like a win-win, right? It benefits
Mm.
them and it benefits the organization too.
Yes.
And it's not cash out of their pocket.
Right.
So all those things can be very, very beneficial to a donor.
Hmm. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for asking that question, Casey. All right. So let me jump into some of the other questions that we have that you and I worked on. Should organizations still be using snail mail, or should they focus on digital tools for year-end giving strategies?
I actually just posted something about that on LinkedIn. So, hi, y'all. I'm on LinkedIn. Follow me. um, hope that was okay, Kirsten.
Of course, of course. Absolutely. Yes.
Oh,
Follow Vicki and
what
advancing
is
experts.
what is so interesting is in this day of digital strategies, which are important, it's an important piece of that multi-channel strategy that we use for year-end campaigning and campaigning throughout the year, is that most people don't give online. In fact, only about 13% of all giving last year came through online or digital means. That's not that
Wow.
much. So does that mean we shouldn't do that? No, we of course want to send out our digital strategies. It's one of the 8 to 10, missives that hopefully will get to somebody and encourage them to make the gift. But snail mail is still king. Snail mail still gets the most money. Direct mail still works. It's
Hmm.
researched. There's a lot of research behind it. It still works. What I
Hmm.
think, what I think we're getting smarter about, and we can use some AI tools and some data crunching to figure out, is who needs to get those direct mail letters, because it's so expensive. 73 cents now for a
Yes.
stamp. You send it, first class. So who needs to get that? Who are the people that are the most likely to respond,
Mm-hmm.
are the most generous, who've given that way year over year over year? Those people you need to spend the 73 cents on those people, plus whatever it costs to print and put the address
Hmm.
on and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Maybe you can split your campaign. If you're doing an acquisition campaign to a group of constituents that may be pretty far removed from, the center of your organization, maybe you send them emails. Maybe get the emails and, all the other things that you did do digitally. Use more digital strategies for those groups, for those people, again, who are your most precious prospects or donors. You want to send snail mail.
Hmm. Hmm. And I just want to say, I know that we have some people that join us internationally on these webinars. I think the philosophy, there may be a couple of nuances that are a little bit different here in the United States, but the philosophy of what Vicki has described in terms of your end of year giving, that applies universally. You do need to have a plan. You do need to personalize. You should have a case for support. Doesn't matter if you're in Guatemala, the Bahamas, Mexico, elsewhere, somewhere nationally in the United States. These are the things that are fundamental core elements to effective end of year fundraising. So just, if you happen to be joining us and you're not in the United States and you're thinking, well, does all of this apply? Maybe some of these things aren't necessarily applicable. I know that, for example, snail mail in the Bahamas is not necessarily a great way to reach people. The mail takes a very long time. But the principles that we're talking about apply. So you just need to figure out what's going to work best in the environment that you're in the ecosystem that you're in. Can you please, so this is from Francisco, can you please comment on the use of the word investment versus donation when used asking donors for funds? I'm aware of the social dividends that a donation might generate. Is it used just as it engages more? Coming in from the financial sector, it confuses me a little bit. That's a good question.
It's a great
Yeah,
question.
using investment versus donation.
I think I'll approach this in maybe a little bit different way, in that in the corporate world, an investment reaps a financial reward.
Hmm.
In the philanthropic world or the nonprofit world, an investment reaps an intangible people reward, right? People saving, serving reward.
Hmm.
So if we use the term investment in it as it applies to nonprofits, we have to talk about the investment in the outcomes of social improvement.
Hmm.
Right? So it's okay to use that language as long as we are using that with the outcome that's not financially motivated, but more socially motivated.
Do you have a preference with language one way or the other, Vicki?
I would say it depends on the donor.
Hmm.
My favorite answer is always it depends, but it does depend on the donor. And as you get to know donors, having one-on-one conversations, you might use that terminology investment because you know that's what's going to resonate with them. Maybe they've used that terminology too. Maybe they really want to see, the ROI of what you're doing, right? Those kinds of, they might use that language that would
Hmm.
make you think investment's a better strategy. Somebody's very philanthropic, giving, donating, philanthropy, those might be the words you use. I think you got to know your audience.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. How can development officers use AI to help streamline their fundraising campaigns?
Isn't it cool that we have AI? Man, it makes life faster in a lot of ways. You can use AI in so many ways, but you got to keep in mind you don't want to lose the essence of your organization because every nonprofit is different. You have the language that you use, you have the constituents you serve. You've seen one nonprofit, you've seen one nonprofit. There, everyone's different. I've used AI, so I'll just share how I've used AI. I've used AI to develop a case for support. You can't develop it from scratch that way. You have to, compile the information, but you can have AI start a case for support for you. And I will give you an example. I was working with a client, a dance company actually in Colorado. And I was working with a partner. I have a couple of consultants who help me on projects. And she was assigned to writing the case for support. And we did a session with the founder and the board chair. It was a real small organization. And she sent, like, only 2 days later, she sent me the whole case for support. And I'm reading through it and I'm like, this does not sound at all like this organization. This doesn't sound like the founder. She uses her language, her words. There's just certain ways she says things. And so she sent it to the founder, and the founder, we got on a call. She goes, this is really great, but doesn't sound like me. I was like, see, so you can use AI tools to do those kinds of things, but read it, review it, make sure it has your voice. You can use AI to help you sort your data. If you want to segment your data and figure out, okay, who am I going to ask to upgrade? Who am I going to ask to renew? Who do I have some new constituents? You can use AI to do some sorting. Just make sure you mark it private. You can mark your AI work private because you don't want any of that out in the universe. You can help, AI can help you write letters. If you want to do an IRA letter that you target, maybe you target to if you know your donors' ages, maybe your older or longer term donors. You can ask AI to write a letter, and then you can, again, make it sound like your case for support. You can
Hmm.
load your case, you can feed AI your case for support and say, write an appeal letter based on my case for support, right? It's all kinds of things you can do. Just remember, feed the more information you can feed AI, the better personalization and the more the whatever you're doing will sound like you.
Love it. Great. Thank you. Okay, what are some ways organizations can create a sense of urgency for donors to give before the end of year? I know you mentioned a couple of these already,
Mhm.
like the reminding them what they gave the prior year, upgrading, but what are some other things that come to mind?
So, don't, that's one of the motivators of donors is kind of create some urgency. You can create some urgency in the end of the year. The end of the year is coming. We see a bigger need, or we see a need for more. We haven't yet done what we needed to do. You can create some language around that as long as it's consistent with your case for support. I've done some kind of just year end is coming reminders. You can do a countdown at the end of the year, an email that comes, the 29th, the one that comes the 30th, and one the 31st, right? You've got 3 more days, 2 more days, 1 more day. We oftentimes will mention, don't forget, make your gift so you get your tax deduction or your tax benefit before the end of the year. Just in general, that's not a motivator. Tax savings is not necessarily the biggest donator for people giving to annual funds.
Mm,
So it's important to mention, but not lead with it.
okay.
So you can
Okay.
create some urgency around tax deadline, around year-end deadline, and around service deadlines.
Okay. And then how do development officers stay focused on major donor development while managing all of these year-end giving appeal strategies that they're juggling?
Depending on your organization and how many major donors you have, and how focused you are on really developing those major gifts. Hopefully you have a portfolio of major donors that you are responsible for shepherding and getting in touch with. It's really smart, again, right now, while you have a little bit of time and you're doing the planning, to start looking at those folks. Who do you need to meet? Who do you need to talk to? Who can you send a letter to? Who do you need to send a personal note to? Like, what are your kind of strategies with those folks now? Don't wait until October, November. Don't wait until December because everybody gets really busy. So I kind of mentioned that before. But having that group of having that portfolio in front of you, looking to see who's due to give about this time of the year, starting to plan for some gatherings, face
Hmm.
to faces, or just outreaches,
Hmm.
is important because that's where, usually for most organizations, that's where the most money is. So you
Hmm.
can't lose sight of that. Don't get sidetracked on all the little details. Maybe AI can help you shorten the time frame of some of that detailed work so you can get that focus right on those larger donors for year-end success.
Vicki, if you have major donors that you're working on and you're setting up maybe some appointments or visits with, are you still sending them all of the other communications as well?
Typically, you would,
Hmm.
but you probably won't just send a direct mail letter to them. You'll have a conversation first, and you'll say, "I'm going to send you this direct mail letter," right? And you write a personal note just
Hmm.
to follow up our conversation. So you don't want to solicit them with a letter before you have a conversation, if that's possible. I know people who I've had donors, they don't care. They don't want to talk to me. They don't really care to have a meeting with me. They love the organization. They're going to give year after year. Just send me the letter. And then it's usually a follow-up call. Hey, sent you the letter. Can I help you facilitate your gift for the year end?
All right. I'm being very respectful of your time. Vicki has another appointment. What I'd like to do, though, Vicki, is if you could just give us a little bit more about advancement experts, how you help organizations with exactly what we talked about today. I think it's really important that everyone has a good understanding of what you're able to offer in case anyone wants to consult with you and just maybe pick your brain or have a project that they'd like to work with you on.
Thank you for offering me that opportunity. And thank you all. It's great to see some friends on the screen,
Mm.
as well as some new folks. So my company's name is Advancement Experts, and I am dedicated to helping nonprofits build sustainability and capacity. I do things like fundraising planning, helping to put together this comprehensive campaign plan for the year, capital campaign development, strategic planning, board development, and I do some market and organizational assessment work.
Fantastic. Great. Well, Vicki, I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes. Vicki has to leave us. She has another appointment. We were so happy to get her for the first 50 minutes of the session today. But thank you, Vicki. Amazing, as always, to have your expertise. You are just an incredible wealth of knowledge and expertise. So thank you so, so much, Vicki.
Thanks for having me. Great to see all of you.
Thank you,
My
Vicki.
pleasure. Vicki, and if we can get your slides, that would be great too. We'll include those in our slides at the end so that everybody has access to that.
I will send those to you.
Great. Thank you, Vicki.
Bye-bye.
Well, thanks everyone so, so much. The slides that I have for you have the follow-up questions that we just talked about. We'll make sure that we include Vicki's slides in there as well. And then on one of the slides, I also have her information in case you weren't able to grab that from the chat. And as Vicki said, this is one of their areas of expertise is planning these campaigns. So I encourage you, we don't do fundraising at Kannico, but we always like to bring in people that complement the work that we do in development and with nonprofits. So please, I've worked with Vicki before. I've known her for a long time. If you need any help, she'll be happy to have a conversation with you. And then we have another webinar coming up, as always, second Tuesday of every month. It'll be 11 a.m. And because we're in this end of year sort of push, we're going to be talking about fundraising. So we may have another expert on campaigns, different types of campaigns, or on possible kind of end of year grants, things like that. So stay tuned for that information. We'll be sure to get that out to you. But in the meantime, does anyone have any other questions that I can answer? Is there anything else that we can talk about? Yes, Lisa, thank you. Vicki did a great job with the strategic plan for Help Our Wounded. That's wonderful. Yeah, a lot of people know her. Vicki really does have just a wonderful reputation in the community for all of her work with nonprofits. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask or they'd like to talk about? Any other questions? Anything that we didn't touch on, maybe? Thought it was very, very interesting to mention the IRA possibility in terms of distribution. I think that's something we should all keep in mind, donor advised fund possibility. But then always just coming back to that core. What is the core bookshelf that she mentioned, right? Your case for support that captures everything that you can go to for all of your little bits and pieces that you're going to use for your campaign. So I think there were some great tips in here. Anything else from anyone?
Hi, Kirsten.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi,
Wow.
how are you?
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I've been listening while Angel's been doing it, but I wanted to ask a question. So I just heard you mention the donor advised funds. Do you recommend us putting together the case for support and reaching out to the community foundations to see if this would capture the interest of any of their donors there? And then what about family foundations? Like outside of the grant cycle?
Yes. So family foundations, I always encourage people to reach out to. It could be a 1 in 10 chance, but it's worth it because if you don't reach out, they don't know about you. We assume everyone knows about us out in the community, and we can't do that. We have to constantly be reminding people we're here, we do this, this great work. We'd love to tell you more about it. So I think it's important. With community foundations, if you can establish a link to someone, if there's a liaison, if there's a community person that you can connect with and say, I just want to share this with you. If you have a donor advised fund holder who might be looking for this particular area of interest, it's in schools and we're helping with clothing or we're helping with whatever. I think that it's always great to be on their radar. The challenge is making sure that you stand out. So I always like to shepherd things, steward things in, right? Facilitate it. So if you have a connection, or even if you just make a connection with someone and just say, I'd love to send you some information. And if they say, well, that's not really how we work, that's fine. We just want to be on your radar in case someone happens to ask what great causes there are out there. Because first of all, people are setting up donor advised funds all the time. right? Some of them have been in existence, yes, for many, many years, but they're also newcomers that are just getting to know the community, or maybe they've decided as a family they're going to take a different strategy, a different approach to their giving this year, and they're going to maybe target, individuals that support families struggling with someone that has cancer, or maybe they are, now going to be interested in after school tutoring. We just don't know. So we can't make assumptions. This is the one thing I will say is that we cannot make assumptions on behalf of potential donors. And that's another reason why going out and you do have to put yourself out there. Vicki mentioned reminding people how much they gave. We assume people remember. They don't always remember. It's so important that we remind them and that we remind them what we're doing and what great work we're doing. So if we hear, this is another thing with the lapsed donors, right? If we have these what we call libunts and sibunts, people that gave some year but not this year, or last year but not this year, we can't assume the reason they haven't given is because they're annoyed, we've upset them. We can't make those assumptions on their behalf. Our job is to continue to steward them, continue to show appreciation, show value for what we do, and leave it in their hands to make the decision about giving. But I can't tell you how many conversations, I mean, even as recently as last week, I was on a conversation and they were saying, well, we've got these 27 Libunts. They're probably upset with us, or maybe we didn't do this, or maybe we didn't. Yeah, we don't know that. We don't know that. They could have just forgotten about us. Maybe we stopped sending them communications because they weren't interacting, you know? So it's really up to us. But Jennifer, I would say put yourself out there. At the risk of having to ask for forgiveness for being too communicative, I would say yes, 100% do it.
Oh,
100%.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Other questions? Anyone else? You can raise your hand or just unmute. Anyone
Alex
else have
left a
any other
question.
questions? Yeah.
Alex said, when we think about audience for year-end giving, should our focus be on active donors from the past year, or should there be more of a focus on lapsed donors, prospective donors?
Well, I'm going to go back to what Vicki said, which is if we tier this a little bit, I would say you start with your major donors because it's September and those are going to need a little more massaging, right? We're going to have to spend a little more time with them, show appreciation, recognize them. Then I would focus on active donors, but I would not discount the lapsed donors by any stretch. So if you have a choice of where to put your energy, we definitely want to work with the large or the what you might consider the major donors for your organization, the active donors definitely, and then I would make sure that you include the lapsed. And and again, I think it depends on what are your resources, what's your bandwidth. If you have the ability to send out those mailed letters to even the Libunts, which would be last year but not this year, because those are probably the easiest for you to gather up again in terms of a gift for this year to resurrect. They may just have given in January of last year and they didn't realize we're coming up to the end of the year. So definitely putting some energy on those. And then your Cybunts also need to be addressed. But if you had to prioritize, that would be my recommendation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe it's the mailed ones to the active donors and it's email communications with the lapsed. Unless you don't have email addresses, which that happens too. I mean, look at all of the donor advised funds gifts that come in from a Fidelity Charitable and so on. We don't have a phone number, we don't have an email address for that donor. So if you look at those, in fact, that may even help dictate how you approach this as well, because just remember, if it's going to be mailed, it's going to have to be mailed in advance. Maybe it's a sequence of 2 or 3. So make sure you've got the time allocated to devote to those people. And then and then there are going to be some that you only have an email address for. Maybe they've only given online, right? Now with those, what I like to do is somehow in your communication say, Mr. Smith, it would be so nice for me to be able to thank you over the phone for your gift. Would you mind sharing your phone number if you're comfortable? Or would you mind sharing your mailing address with us so that we can send you our case for support or our annual report or an impact report, right? So if you can find ways to continue to enrich your database too, then you have more ways that you can reach people. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps up today. Thank you all so, so much. Wonderful to see everyone here. I hope you all feel energized and recharged as we get closer to the end of the year. And the reason we did this in September is because we know how quickly time flies, and this all requires a little bit of a strategy, right? We want to kind of have things teed up. And if you start getting those letters ready now that you know are going to go out in a sequence, just remember that as you send out your sequence of letters and communications, you want to make sure that you're removing the people that gave in response to the first request, they gave in response to the second, so that you're not, there's nothing worse than getting a letter from an organization when you already just gave a gift, right? You gave a gift a couple weeks ago. It just shows that maybe on the back end they're not quite as organized as they could be, and they didn't recognize that your gift already came in. So anyway, thank you all so, so much. Great to have you here, and we look forward to seeing you next month, the next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you.
Thank you. Bye.
Our
Leslie.
pleasure. Bye-bye. Thank
Thanks.
you. Just looking through the comments in the chat. Okay, good. I think you got them all. Good job. Is Justina still on? Let's see, no, I think she's gone. Okay.
I think all we have
Oh,
left
we
are
we missed
fireflies
her
then.
question. We missed her question about giving in, for example, African countries where there are no clear tax incentives or laws. Okay,
Oh, I did not
we'll
see
have to
that.
email her
Yeah.
separately.
Let me copy it. Justine. Oh, okay. Yeah, missed that one. Let's copy that.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.